Today's episode of the GoldCast is sponsored by the beginning of our playoff dress rehearsal. It is here, finally. The Seahawks was kind of the first part of it, no question, but this next 3-game stretch is going to be no joke, and Raymond and I are so excited to talk all about the first game in our playoff dress rehearsal. But before we get started, Raymond, why don't you let them know, where can they find us?
You can like us on Facebook.com/TheGoldCast, and you can also follow us on Twitter at @the_Goldcast, and be sure to subscribe, or subscribe to Apple, YouTube, Stitcher. I'm not used to saying that. I'm so used to iTunes, but iTunes does not exist anymore. But make sure to subscribe to us on Apple, the Apple platform.
Well, it's on its way out. iTunes is on its way out. It's not quite over yet.
So be sure to
Apple
Podcast, but subscribe to us via iTunes or Apple, YouTube, and Stitcher, all under the same moniker of the GoldCast. Be sure to leave a like if you like it. Leave a comment because we love to talk with you. YouTube is definitely one of the more popular platforms that people like to interact with us, and we certainly do appreciate it. And subscribe.
I think you've done a great job. Raymond, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at or on Twitter at Ray Solis, and then you can find me on Instagram at Ray Solis1.
Man, we just messed you up this week. We just got you all twisted. You can find me at Rudy Solis 3 on Instagram, at Rudy Solis 3RD, Rudy Solis 3rd on Twitter. All right, Raymond, here it is. GoldCast Nation, we're back. The greatest fanalist in the game is here. Your professor of fanalism is here. Class is in session. Let's go.
San Francisco, are you ready? This is the GoldCast.
Boom! Welcome to another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis I, baby.
Boom! Raymond, it is time. The Green Bay Packers will be here on Sunday. A team that historically, this decade, we have pretty much gotten the better end of, but it's been a drought, and now the Packers are back in town, and the Niners are good once again. Let's get started, Raymond. Let's talk about this game. I am pumped. This got flexed from the 1 o'clock game to appropriately the 5 o'clock game, which will make it the third game in the last 4 weeks that we have had in prime time. Deservedly so. The NFL does understand this is one of the richest, most popular franchises in the entire league. No, I'm not talking about Green Bay. I'm talking about the 49ers. That's a fact.
Yeah, Green Bay is publicly owned by the fans, isn't it? Or their part ownership. Like They've got some weird co-op thing going on over there.
Yeah, they do. It seems cool, though. But this has been flexed. It'll be the third of 4 games that is in prime time for us. I couldn't be more excited. Raymond, let's start with you. What do you see going into this game? What are you looking at? What does the greatest fanalist in the game think about this upcoming game against the Green Bay Packers?
Well, the first thing I look at, and this also coincides with how I approach fantasy, is the injury report list. And Matt Mayoko does a terrific job reporting all of this via Twitter, so it's very accessible, and I actually get updates directly from him. I have notifications from him turned on, so they come to me. I never seek them out. But George Kittle was back at practice today, nursing that knee and ankle injury that he's been going through. Deebo Samuel was in practice today. He was dealing with the shoulder injury that he got on Sunday. And Emmanuel Sanders with the rib injury was at practice today. All 3 of those guys were limited, but those are all 3 big guns in our passing game that really need to play. And according to Matt Mayoko, he says that his guess is that they will play on Sunday night. The fact that they were all participants in practice today in some form or another certainly lends itself to optimism for them playing this Sunday. And we got to watch the report. Tomorrow will be kind of the main report to watch, the last final report before really figuring out whether they're going to play or not. My guess is if Kittle's already making strides to make it to limited practice, he's making a conscious effort to get back on the field for this game, given the circumstances and, the gravity of the playoff implications, even though we're still, several games out from when it starts to get really tight in as far as seeding's concerned. But nevertheless, it's still great to see that he's making his way back into the lineup, because we certainly need him, although Dwelly's been filling in very nicely. Matt Breida didn't play today. D Ford didn't play. Robbie Gould and Joe Staley didn't play. The one I'm least worried about out of that group, two of them, Joe Staley, because Justin School has been playing terrific all season long in his stead, and D Ford has been kind of battling these injuries off and on for most of the season. So his rest is more of just a precaution. My guess is he will play on Sunday. And Matt Breida, as he's been battling his ankle injury since, he had it last year, late in the season, battled through it most of the time. But I think now we're coming through a stretch where we have such a good running back committee that I think the Niners should be cautious in preserving him. I mean, if he's ready to go, then great. But if not, then I wouldn't risk further injury and losing him for a longer stretch of time. On the Green Bay side, most of those guys are healthy. I know Devontae Adams was limited in practice today. And I know the fullback Danny Vitale was limited. And the backup guard Cole Madison was added to the injury report. But I'm pretty sure all those guys are going to play. And then some veteran rest was given to Jimmy Graham, the tight end Mercedes Lewis, and the cornerback Tremaine Williams, and the right tackle Brian Balaga. And so I expect to see all those guys on Sunday.
Yeah, the Packers have been one of the healthiest teams of for the season. Let's talk about some of my favorite stats, things that I like to look at when looking at these games. Green Bay right now is averaging 25 points per game this season, ranked number 9 in the NFL. They're surrendering 20 points per game this season, 14th in the NFL. San Francisco, on the other hand, is averaging 29 points per game this season, 2nd in the NFL, and surrendering 15 points per game this season, also 2nd in the NFL. On the road, the Packers have not been as good. They've actually been only averaging 21.5 points per game.
Just a hair better than their defensive effort.
And we are only giving up 17 points per game at home this year, 4th in the NFL. On the road, they're 20th in the NFL, and at home, we're 4th in the NFL in how much we're giving up. So, and then the Packers are giving up an average of 19.2 points per game on the road, almost identical to what they're getting on offense. So, just looking at those, they're just, you do what you will with those stats, but that's just kind of showing you on average what's happening when Green Bay goes on the road and what's happening when San Francisco is playing at home. And clearly, San Francisco is a team. Home field advantage has finally really settled in for this team. They've been there long enough now. The players, all these players, with the exception of, I guess, Staley. I don't even know if anyone else. I don't know if anyone else besides Staley has even played at Candlestick. Is anyone else on the team? No. Buckner? Buckner didn't play.
I think Armstead did, because he was drafted in 2015.
So Armstead, maybe. So Armstead, yeah.
Yeah, I believe Armstead's the only one. Maybe maybe Robbie Gould in the past. I know Robbie Gould's played there as a Bear.
As a Bear, but not as a 49er.
No.
Okay, yeah. So, for most of these players, this is home. This is home field is Levi. This is all they've ever known for 99.9% of the guys on this team. And so the home field advantage is a real thing with San Francisco, and it's interesting to see those margins and to see how well they're doing. Clearly, the advantage is in San Francisco. San Francisco is in Vegas 3-point favorites, although the public, Raymond, they don't believe in us. The betting public, 71% are betting in favor of Green Bay.
That's surprising. But you know what's not surprising? When the professionals talk about the matchup. Now, Inside the NFL is not the show it once was when you and I were growing up watching Nick Bonacani and who else was there? I think
Len Dawson and Chris Collinsworth.
Chris Collinsworth came later, but Chris Collinsworth was there. Dan Marino was part of that crew back in the day when he retired, of course, not during the 80s and 90s. But the crew that exists now, which is, I think, Brandon Marshall, Ray Lewis, Phil Simms, and I forget who the other guy is. They usually have a guest pro, and then JB is the host. However, everyone on the panel picked the 49ers to win. Despite the fact that Green Bay is coming off of the bye, so they've had rest, and they've had time to prepare. And I kind of have to side with the pros on this one. Obviously, I have bias, but to me, the matchups just don't. The defensive matchup that Green Bay is going up against just does not favor them in any way, shape, or form, really. To me, I think the only chance they've got is to give us a heavy dose of Devontae Adams and Jamal Williams. That, to me, is the only chance they've got. And because that's an area that the Niners defense has been susceptible. We've dropped in the rankings progressively ever since the Rams game. We're now ranked 20th in the NFL. We're now considered, that's close to bottom, that's bottom half of the league. That's not very good. Although, it's still, we've gotten a little bit better. We played Arizona better than we did the first time. And we mostly kept Chris Carson in check in the Seattle game. So those two games in the last 3-game stretch were the latter 2 games of that 3-game stretch were good. I'd say the Seattle game was the best out of that 3. But Arizona was not able to establish the run as easily as they did the first time, and Seattle really never got going in the running game, despite having a accumulated total of 100-plus yards. So to me, this is the only area that really Green Bay has an advantage, at least in terms of the rankings. But I still don't think that that's enough because we've faced mobile quarterbacks for 3 straight weeks. And now we're going up against a quarterback who was once very mobile and is not quite as mobile as he used to be. He can still run when he needs to, but he is definitely not that player anymore in my estimation. And his ability to move in the pocket is just not the same. Not the same as Russell Wilson, not even close. And certainly not the same as Kyler Murray, who's a little lightning bolt out there. And so to me, when you put that kind of quarterback against this type of pass rush, I think it's going to be a long day for Aaron Rodgers. The 49ers lead the NFL in sacks with 39. We're tied for first place with New England, I believe. Eric Armstead leads the team in sacks. He's got 8. Bosa still has 7. He's been sackless the last couple games, but his pressure presence is still very, very impactful, regardless of whether it shows up in the stat sheet. D Ford has got 6.5 sacks. He's been great. Buckner's got 5. So he's still solid. So we still have all of our pass rushers are still extremely healthy and are still playing really well. So I just don't see, and we've got the number 1 pass defense in the NFL. So the one area, making Rodgers one-dimensional, I think, is something that we'll be able to accomplish, despite being susceptible this latter half of the season. And I think that that's going to force Aaron Rodgers to be one-dimensional. And even though Aaron Rodgers is definitely in anyone's top 3 choices of quarterbacks you'd like to have throwing the football in a pressure situation, but against this pass rush that's extremely young and extremely fast and doesn't have to blitz you to be effective because all 4 of the starting front are Pro Bowl caliber players, I just think it's a tall task. It's an extremely tall task for even someone as good as Aaron Rodgers, who's going to be wearing a gold jacket when his career is all said and done.
It's definitely going to be a tall task, I really couldn't think of a greater start to the playoff dress rehearsal than this game right here. The Packers have been very competitive. I really kind of toggle between them and Seattle for that third spot in my power rankings for the NFC. I put the 49ers at number 1. I put the Saints at number 2. And, for the last maybe 3 or 4 weeks in my brain, I've been toggling back and forth between the Packers and the Seahawks. I think they're kind of close and level to each other. I think both teams are capable of beating any of the other teams in the top 4 on any given Sunday, but I don't believe either of those teams really have enough to make it all the way to an NFC Championship or even further beyond to a Super Bowl. I just don't think so. I'd say the Packers have a much better chance than the Seahawks because they're a more complete team. But having said that, they have not been quite as dominant and quite as consistent as the Saints and the 49ers have been, even though the records between the Packers and the Saints are very close. So
yeah, and they
Green
started
Bay,
defensively. I thought Green Bay started off pretty good. I thought whoa, hey, if this team if their defense plays like this, like they've been playing throughout the way they did throughout the first 3 weeks, then Green Bay is going to be a really tough out, and they've still been a tough out. Their record's 8-2, so they clearly have been winning out their games, but they've won on the heels of Aaron Rodgers, and they've won without Aaron Rodgers. So similar to the Niners that we've won in multiple ways, Green Bay's kind of done the same thing. But I just don't think that Green Bay they've not, clearly by the rankings, they've not been as consistent as we have offensively and defensively. This team is extremely, extremely susceptible against the run, against the pass. I mean, they're bottom 10 in passing yards and rushing yards allowed. They're bottom 5 in total yards allowed. They're middle of the pack in points allowed, as you pointed out earlier. So to me, I just think those factors going up against our offense, especially if our 3 horses play. And Deebo Samuel, I really hope his shoulder's okay. If he practices tomorrow, then expect to see him on Sunday for sure. Deebo Samuel has caused 12 defenders to miss tackles on him this season. That leads all wide receivers in the NFL. And he's a rookie. So this guy is playing the way he's and remember how I said that George Kittle was a big influence to him. He's taking that, he's playing to the best of his ability as far as that kind, because that's what I see when I see George Kittle. It's a guy that makes people miss tackles. George Kittle probably leads the league in missed tackles and tight ends. Maybe he doesn't because of the games he's missed lately, but I'm sure he's up there in that category. But the fact that Deebo Samuel leads the league in wide receivers in this category, that's huge. That's absolutely huge. That's exactly what Kyle Shanahan looks for in offensive players, is their ability to get yak. We want yards after the catch. Deebo Samuel's been outplaying everybody in that category, and in not only on the team, but of course now that we know across the entire NFL. So that's terrific. If he plays, he's going to be a huge factor, because he had a huge game last week, and I expect him to have another big game today, especially if Emmanuel Sanders is not 100%. We saw him grimacing after each catch last week.
I mean, he was bent over. He was
hunched
game
the entire time. It's tough. I expect him to be a little bit better this week, but if things kind of cramp up and start to hurt, then expect Deebo Samuel to get majority of those looks, and same with Dwelly and Kittle.
Absolutely. And Packers and Saints have the exact same record. I mentally gapped for a second there. They're both 8-2. They don't have similar records. They're the exact same. But I just think the Saints
more well-rounded.
Yes, 100%. And I still put the Packers as a tier above the Seahawks. But as I was mentioning, can't really ask for a better opening game to this 3-game stretch. Here's a fun stat for you. No team in the Super Bowl era has ever had to face 3 teams with a winning percentage of 800 or above for 3 straight weeks this late into the season. It's never happened. So this will be a history-making. It's a fun one, right? This is a history-making 3-week journey for the 49ers. I'm very excited. This is a great storyline. You've got the age-old gunslinger Aaron Rodgers coming into town, with arguably one of the best teams he's had, if not the best, maybe the best team he's had since the Packers won the Super Bowl, because he finally has a defense. And he hasn't. When he went to the Super Bowl, he had a top 5 defense. The very following year, his defense was in the top 20, never gone back since. So arguably, this is the best defense he's had since he won the Super Bowl. And you have him coming into town. You have the young gunslinger, Jimmy G, who clearly has had flashes of brilliance, but hasn't had to execute it at the level that, say, maybe this team would require, because his team is so well-rounded. But at the same time, was coming off a devastating ACL tear. Took him about as we predicted here in the GoldCast, took him about a month to get his feet underneath him, and now he is really showing, as we get later into the season, that he's balling out more and more and capable of playing at a very high level. Last week, 400 yards, 4 touchdowns. The only other 2 quarterbacks to do that in a 49er uniform are Joe Montana and Steve Young. So clearly, you get Jimmy G versus Aaron Rodgers. You get these 2 dominant defenses. You get Nick Bosa, the number one in Pro Bowl votes as of this week, as of this recording. We're recording this Thursday night, November 21st. He leads the league. The 49ers lead the league actually in Pro Bowl votes, which is a side note. But
no surprise there.
You just have these, no surprise at all. You have just these 2 powerhouses going at it on Sunday night, and I just can't think of a better and bigger stage. The Seahawks 49ers game from several weeks ago, easily the biggest game of the season up until that point. I'm going to go on a limb right now and say I think the biggest game of the season now is got to be this game.
I think so. Just like when Seattle was in town, we said that was the biggest game of the season. When Carolina was in town, we said the same thing. So, I think for the next 3 weeks.
I'm saying across the board.
Oh, really?
Right? I'm saying across the board. I think the number one game in the league this week is got to be Green Bay and San Francisco.
And I agree. Just like 2 weeks ago, Monday night, even though we didn't play on Sunday with the rest of the league, the most anticipated game of that week was the Monday night showdown between us and Seattle.
Oh, 100%. That was the biggest game of the season and of the week.
And I think next week
definitely the biggest game.
Next week is going to be the Saints and Niners, and the week after that is going to be who's after that? Who's after them? Who's the third team?
The Saints.
It's the Saints and then Seattle again? No. Seattle's at the end of the year.
End of the year. After the Saints, we have the Falcons, the Rams, and then the final game in Seattle. Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to go back up there and go. Oh, I can't wait. All right. So,
and what was that other stat that you told me about Aaron Rodgers?
Oh, Aaron Rodgers has never faced a 9-1 team
ever in his entire playing career.
Yeah. Well, 9-1 is pretty rare. If you think about it, that's pretty rare. It doesn't happen a whole lot.
But he's played a long time.
But according to ESPN, he has played a long time. According to ESPN, the stat that I saw today was that Aaron Rodgers had never faced a 9-1 team. That's a fun stat. A lot of fun stats coming out of this game. But so, you look at the storylines heading into Sunday, and this just has all the markings, all the makeup for another classic showdown. So, Raymond, I have to ask you, where do you fall on this game? Vegas has us at 3-point favorites. The question is, do you take that bet?
To me,
shout out to the old school GoldCast.
When we did the Vegas line. To me, I think that this game is a lot easier. To me, the outcome of this game is a lot easier to predict versus the past 3 games, which were all division games, very difficult games against good teams. Despite what Arizona's record says, they're still a good football team within the division. And that certainly played out in both games that we played against them. and Seattle certainly delivered on in every category in terms of what we expected these teams to go at it. This game, I think, is going to be a little bit different because I think the quarterback mobility is going to be a huge factor. And I think that it's just not a good matchup for them offensively. And defensively, I just think they play well overall, and they have played well enough to win games to be 8 to help their team remain to be 8-2 as they are now. But I think that there's, against the state-of-the-art offense that Kyle Shanahan runs, I just think there's too many holes in the secondary and in the first and second level defensive line and linebacker that really is going to allow our running game to get back on track. And it's going to open up the play action pass like we've been doing in the first half of the season, more so than we've seen the past 3 games. And I just think that this to me is going to be a 30-13 contest. And Aaron Rodgers, I predict he's going to get sacked about 5 times.
30-13. Holy mother effing shit. Wow. 30-13. I don't know if I have that level of optimism. I wish I did, but it wouldn't be a classic.
Someone predicted 60 points, I think, in last week's contest.
That was our boy. Yeah, that was our boy. That was our boy on YouTube who also defended the GoldCast. That was
I wish he would have been right.
I really.
I mean, we still won the game 36-26, so it still was by 2 possessions.
No. That prediction was for the Seahawks game.
Oh, that's right.
That was for the Seahawks game. Yeah, it was for the Seahawks game. I wish. Unfortunately, it was not to be. So, okay, so it wouldn't be a classic Rudy Niners. What the hell am I saying? It wouldn't be a classic Rudy GoldCast prediction week without me tossing a little bit of pessimism in there, just because I don't get to play, so it's so out of my hands that it makes me nervous because I like to control so much of what I do. But fandom is purely spectating. All you can do is watch on in glee, in horror, in anticipation, in excitement, in fear, in list whatever emotion you want here.
All right, so give me a score prediction, and then give me an individual player performance prediction, or some kind of team prediction.
I also think this game is going to be pretty tight. I do. I think the Green Bay's got a pretty good running game over there. And as you mentioned before, the 49ers have been exposed. Ever since Quan Alexander went down, they've been a lot more susceptible to strong run games. I do predict the 49ers will win.
I think since the Rams game, people have been dialing in on that. That's to me, ever since 7 straight run plays to a touchdown with no TFLs in that drive, ever since that drive, I feel like the teams have been zoning in on us.
Yeah, McVay exposed a weakness in the defense and then never went back to it, and that's why the Rams are who they are this year.
Because
we did shut it down.
All of the yards he amassed in that drive, that was the most rushing yards he amassed the entire game. After that, we adjusted for sure, but accumulated it was over 100 yards.
Yes. So back to this game here. I believe this game is going to be very competitive. I'm going to say I'm going to go. I do think the Niners beat the spread. I'm going to say it's going to be somewhere in the avenue of 31 28, somewhere in there. Does Jimmy G? Here's the thing about Kittle being in or out of the game. Obviously has a huge impact, but Dwelly has been a fantastic offensive
would have had 3
weapon
touchdowns
for us.
last week. Had one not got called back.
Exactly. And Deebo Samuels is the first 49ers wide receiver rookie ever to have back-to-back 100-yard games. And you were talking about his yak. Also, let's talk about the concentration level of this kid and his ability to make plays. That catch last week on the sidelines against the back
the one that cost him his shoulder, actually.
Yeah, that was no joke. The kid is got some talent. And I was saying this in the weeks leading up to this, that somebody has got to step up when Emmanuel Sanders and Kittle are not in the game. Somebody else has got to step up. And Sanders has done it, and Dwelly did it last week. I believe that the 49ers continue. I do agree. I think that the San Francisco defense makes it very hard on Aaron Rodgers, but he's a slippery one. And Aaron Rodgers is the kind of guy that plays up to the level of big game moments. You know, he's not a guy that crumbles very easily. You know, so the bigger the spotlight, the greater he plays. I do suspect that they do better than 2 touchdowns. I think this is a much closer game. I do think that we beat the spread. Like I said, 31-28, somewhere in there. Yeah, like I guess that's right at the spread. But yeah, that's where I'm putting us. I think somewhere in the avenue of 31-28. I think Jimmy G continues to keep his consistency. This is going to be another great test for him, and more importantly, a test for that offensive line, because this is a good defense. This is a very good defense. So I really want to see how Jimmy G does against this D-line and how the offensive line holds up against them as well, because this is going to be a great test for him. There are guys going to be coming at him. And this, again, is going to help give Jimmy G those reps that he desperately needs in preparation for what's going to be a grueling postseason.
Yeah, for sure. Now, what about predictive stats? Is someone going to get X amount of touchdowns? Is someone going to get X amount of picks? What do you think?
I don't know. I don't. You're the greatest fanalist in the game. That's more your territory. What do you see? That I couldn't tell you.
I think Aaron Rodgers is going to get sacked 5 times. That's what I think. He's slippery, but he's not as slippery as Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson got sacked 5 times, by the way. And what's his name? Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's even more slippery than Russell Wilson because he's younger, and Russell Wilson's, he's a little bit older. He still moves. I think he still moves terrifically, but he's lost, I'd say, maybe half a step in his game, half a step, maybe 2. He's definitely throwing a lot more than he's running nowadays, which you kind of have to at this day and age. You got to take advantage of the rules and how they favor offenses and really kind of make things difficult for the defense. But whenever those rule changes come, several years, once the defenses catch up in terms of technique, then it gets really difficult for offenses again.
Well, it's all about stripping, right? You notice that now it's not just about the tackle, but it's the tackle and the punch. You punch the football, you're grabbing at the waist and you're pulling your other arm around the ball, which Fangio was doing that all the way back in the Harbaugh days. That was huge.
Takeaway Thursdays.
Our turnover rate. Yeah, our turnover rate was so high with Fangio because that was a technique that he really pushed that has really caught on, especially with there being so many rules on how people tackle. The turnover rate has definitely increased in terms of how players, the technique that defenses are using now is it's all about trying to get that ball out of your hands. Right. That's as much a priority as tackling you at the same time.
I still think, defensively, collectively, this group Green Bay has 25 sacks on the year. That's good enough for middle of the road NFL. And against our offensive line, especially with guys like Kittle, if he plays, Dwelly, and Kyle Juszczyk is back. Kyle Juszczyk got stopped 3 times on the 3-yard line. He almost scored several times last week. But I just think that that's another matchup, line of scrimmage, where it all starts. I just think that our offensive line and their defensive line just do not stack up the same way. The only one that's going to give it, there's 2 people that are going to give us trouble because the lion's share of their pass rush comes from 2 players, and that's Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith. The Smith brothers, so to speak. Those are the two guys that they're going to have, that they're going to really test us in terms of pass rush. But the fact that it's focused, because so much of it is coming from an individual, it allows us to focus a little bit. We get to focus the pass protection a little bit more by chipping or putting, or having Kyle Juszczyk back there, or having Dwelly or Kittle back there to take them out. We know that their running game is going to be very similar to, or it's going to be a derivative version of ours, because Matt LaFleur is a Kyle Shanahan. He comes from that system. Although he got brought in from, what's his name? Robert Saleh brought him in because they're very good friends, and he vouched for him and brought him on. And we know his brother, the other LaFleur, I forget his name, but he's still with us. And I believe he's the pass game coordinator for us right now. And so I just think, like, when we haven't talked about coaches, but that's another matchup that, once again, Kyle Shanahan wins almost all of these matchups. He's only lost once, and that was because our kicker failed to make a kick, not because he made a bad, decision. And so to me, Matt LaFleur against Kyle Shanahan, it's like no contest. This is like you got the advantage of being a first-year coach, and you're taking some of the innovation from Kyle Shanahan's system and incorporating it into an Aaron Rodgers-led offense. You're going to have good results with that, and you've gotten him a running back in. You've gotten him a terrific running back in Aaron Jones. So, that gives them a balanced attack. A balanced offense is always going to be a good thing for any quarterback, especially someone as good as Aaron Rodgers, even this late in his career. But I just don't think it's enough. At the end of the day, it's good enough to make some plays here and there, but it's not going to be enough to win out the game. I just think there's too much firepower on our defense and too much firepower on the offense. Granted, if our three big guns play, if they play, then obviously they're not going to be 100%, but even 70, 80% versions of those guys is still going to, keep defenses on their toes.
Agreed. It's going to be a great game. And yes, I agree. I think we both agree the 49ers will win this game. So what say you, GoldCast Nation? Let us know at youtube.com/thegoldcast. Let us know what you think is going to happen in this game. Who's going to win by how many points? This is your favorite game. You guys always seem to comment. There's so many comments every time on the preview. Everyone loves the prediction GoldCast. It seems to be the most popular episode we have.
This group loves to predict blowouts. I mean, I just predicted a blowout too, but this
they
group,
do.
I think almost every week is a blowout in their mind. We've had quite a few blowouts. I'd love to see the stat on which NFL team has the most blowouts this year. Pretty sure it's between us and New England.
Too. Yeah, New England's had some crazy blowouts. Some crazy.
They've had blowouts where Tom Brady hasn't done anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, they were saying that I saw some stat. This was, I don't know, around week 6, 7, or 8, somewhere in there, where it was like had New England not gone on the offense, not gone on the field through like the first 6 weeks, they would still be like 4th in the AFC. Like, that's how much the defense has scored. Some crazy number like that.
If the defense didn't score, they would be like 4th in the AFC?
No, it was like if the offense had never stepped onto the field, they would still be like 4th in the AFC.
Oh, wow.
Because that's how many points the defense has scored and how few points the defense has allowed.
Yeah, so San Francisco's number 2 in that category. They've allowed 155 points, and the next best team is New England. Or I'm saying the team ahead of us is New England. They've allowed 108 points. So there's a huge gap between how much points they've allowed and how many points we've allowed. I still think our team's better, but
I agree. More well-rounded.
Yep.
Equally as brilliant coach. Just hasn't earned the pedigree yet, but he's still young. Plenty of time.
Absolutely.
All right. So concludes another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis I, baby.
Boom. We'll see you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel. Let's go.
This is the GoldCast.